Okay, now we're recording. So in Utah, our issue was a bunch of board members had job changes and things come up in their lives that all of a sudden we did not have a president, a VP, or half of our board members that could continue on for the next year. So we sent out like a desperate plea, and we got this amazing response, and actually more people than we could even have on our board. So it was great to see people step up, but now we have a lot of people on our board who have never been part of our user group leadership before, and so it's a lot of trying to get them up to speed. So this got me thinking of like all the rest of your groups. I know others have mentioned that you've been a leader forever and you're not sure where the group would be if you weren't there. So my hope is that this year we can start developing up leadership talent within our own groups so that eventually at some point we all can roll off and take on other activities without being worried what would happen to our user group. So I do encourage you for these calls, if you have people in your group who are interested in potentially volunteering more in the future but are not sure what it would take or that want to build up those skills, definitely invite them to join these calls. So today's focus is basically talking about the role of the regional leader. What does it really take to be a regional leader? So we have 3 panelists who graciously said that they'd share their knowledge. And those of you that can see my screen, if you're all connected online, I have a little profile about them and their groups, but I'll have all of them introduce themselves and tell you more about themselves. So Troy, do you want to start?
Sure. I'm Troy Ligon. I'm in Tampa, Florida. Been running the SunCoast Organizations group down here for about the past 15 years or so. Started out longer than that back. My first volunteering on the organization running our group was taking over the website and helping them capture meeting minutes and get them posted on the website. To running the group in a short number of years, very similar to what Michelle was mentioning. We had a lot of board members who suddenly had job changes and changes in their lives that pretty much eliminated their ability to be able to sit on the board and actually do any positive work for us. So that's sort of how that's run. At several different times, we do seem to manage to get some board member. One of the big challenges that want to volunteer to be a board member, but they're not real sure what exactly that means. Sort of duties such with that. So it's always interesting to see, how you can split up the different tasks that need to be done, bring someone up to speed, and yet also be sure that you've got all the things that need to be done. That's where I find the challenge.
Okay, thanks, Troy. Alfredo.
Hello, Alfredo Abate. I am the current president of the Chicago Oracle Users Group. Kind of fell into the role by accident somewhat. I was actually reaching out to the former president, Tony Jedlinski, who had ran the group for, almost 18 plus years. Just more on, because I wanted to present, and I hadn't seen a meeting in a few years. And while we were trying to coordinate that with the president that was running it at the time, that president sent out an email at the beginning of the year in 2014 and basically said, he apologized to everybody and said, I've been involved with multiple startups in the Chicagoland area and it just has consumed all my time and I need someone to step up. So I decided, why not? And apparently I was the only one that stepped up because they just gave it to me. There was no if there was going to be more than one person, they were going to have a voting, and I guess nobody else wanted to do it, but I'm extremely grateful that I did, because it's been nothing but rewarding since. But I do fear some of the things that, both I'm sure Mike's going to bring up in a second, and Troy has brought up, and what Michelle has experienced is, what happens if my life circumstances change and I can't continue to fulfill running the group. So part of what I did last year was I at least added 2 more board positions to help out with some of the workload, and also hopefully maybe perhaps groom those folks to consider running the group in the future, or at least help me plan to how we can better prepare a succession plan, and even if they don't want to be the presidents going forward. So that's probably the biggest thing, and that's what I see with some of the other groups as I go to conferences and stuff and talk to some of these leaders or former leaders. You hear the same story over and over again. So-and-so was running it, or it just fell to the wayside, and I inherited this. And so I think it seems like a perpetual cycle that we see with a lot of these user groups. So I'm glad that Michelle and IOUG is getting this going so that we can kind of maybe help formalize and stabilize the groups a little better. Everything else about the group, I think, is in my bio there on the screen. So that's all I have.
Thanks, Alfredo. And
Yep.
then Mike, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, I'm Mike Gangler. Many of you guys already know me. Been around the user community. Actually, next year will be 30 years since I've been either associated or been attending user group functions. 87, 88, around that time frame. Regarding the Southeast Michigan Oracle professionals, we used to be called Detroit Oracle User Group. But the thing is, what we wanted to do is kind of include the other areas of Detroit. So we just made it Southeast Michigan. The other thing we wanted to do is we just didn't want DBAs and stuff. We wanted all Oracle professionals to be part of our group. So that was the reason for the name change. Also, Dallas Oracle User Group grabbed Doug.com. So we ended up with sumop.org. So as Alfredo mentioned, we've had a lot of iterations and a lot of ups and downs with the Detroit User Group since 1988. I have not always been the president, although I've always been on the board doing something. I've done pretty much every job on that board. The 2 people that still are on the board are myself and Brian Lasky, who's the treasurer. He's been the treasurer now for at least 15 years, if not longer. But I had every job. We've had, I think, total, including myself, 5 different presidents over the 5 years, or over the 30 years. And the one thing I'll say, with the exception of myself and the very first president, the other 3 or 4 that were presidents, one thing that was in common with them, number 1, they all owned their own company. That was number 1. And number 2, they had assistants doing all the work. So they would say, hey, send out an email blast to do this, and call this person to get that, blah, blah, blah. With the exception of myself and the very first president, we haven't had that. So a couple years back, maybe 5, 6 years back, all, like everyone else, all the user members that were helping out, we used to do half-day meetings. And all of a sudden, it was just me. And I was doing the whole thing, arranging the speakers, getting the venue, getting the lunch, sending out the reminders, et cetera. And I finally said, 5 or 6 years, I said, I can't do it anymore. Unless somebody steps up, I'm not going to do half-day meetings. And what we ended up doing is, for about a year, we didn't have anything at all. And so someone said, well, why don't you try a meetup? We'll just do a monthly meeting after work. So we meet the second Tuesday of every month. And now what we've done is open up the webinar option so people can actually dial in and call. So that's helped. We've built up a group now that's pretty steady. We get anywhere from 10 to 20 it's pretty good for after work. I mean, people have lives and they don't want to necessarily go to these kind of things, but it's been pretty good. I think our total membership is around 140, 150. And so that's where we're at now. We have some the good thing is the people that show up are the same people. So I'm hoping to get them to participate more and help out. Now, Mouse is another event, and that is the Michigan Oracle User Summit. And what it is a mini collaboration. So our group, which is part of IOUG, we get the MIOUG, the Oracle Application Group. We try to work with the OD-TUG group and the JD Edwards. We have a one full day conference a year on November 8th, which includes multiple tracks, a keynote, and around between 40 and 50 speakers, depending if we have more than one keynote. So that's worked out real well. And in that case, we actually have 15 volunteers, and that's working out real well. And we're recycling new people all the time there. So I think the key there is that we're always giving somebody something to do, make them feel valued and feel needed. So that's kind of a brief stuff about me.
That's great, Mike. Thank you. So I have a whole list of questions for these guys, but if anyone has other questions for him, please chime in. My first question is, I just want you to describe what is your role as a leader of your group? What does that really mean in your day-to-day or month-to-month? Let's start with Troy.
What does it mean to be a leader? Well, in my case, as Mike was just saying, I pretty much do it all. I arrange the meetings, I get the speakers, I get the food, have the venue, send out the email blast, update the website, pretty much soup to nuts, run the whole thing. Pretty much.
So you are the user group board, basically, Troy.
Pretty much. It really scares me. We do have a treasurer, we have two VPs, and we have a secretary. But in the day-to-day operations, they don't really do a whole lot. Sometimes I'll ask them to take care of something, and I've missed, I think, 3 meetings in the past 10 years. And we have monthly meetings, so I've missed 3 of those total. And each one of those I had arranged with one of my other board members to, host the meeting, get the food, that sort of thing. And in each case, there was something entertaining that occurred. Either the food didn't show up, or they arrived at the venue and the venue wasn't reserved, or always something entertaining. So it's one of those things. If you don't put your hands on it yourself, you really don't know if it's actually going to happen or not. That's really where I've struggled most. Is I'd really love to step away and let some of the other folks carry the load a bit, but at the same time, I've got a distribution list of about 550 to 600 folks, and any given month we'll have anywhere from 30 to 75 folks show up for the meeting, and it's a different group each time. And I feel bad for them if I send out an email blast and say, hey, we're going to do this on this date, and they spend their time and energy to come to the venue, and something doesn't go according to plan. There's no presentation or whatever. That I find really hard to take. And so, being the type A personality that I am, I tend to just take care of it myself and let it ride.
All right. Thanks, Troy. Alfredo, can you describe your role in Chicago?
Sure. Officially, the role says president, but like Troy, I think it's anywhere from, secretary to venue, event coordinator, sponsor coordinator. That's the key thing for us, because the big thing about us is we're completely unfunded. So if I don't have a vendor of some sort to sponsor the meeting, then it's very difficult to have a meeting. There has been a couple cases where I've forked over the money only because I wanted to have the meeting. And we try to get like a free venue, like at the public library. I think that's where our meeting we had last year, I think that you and Troy showed up for, was at the public library.
Yeah.
So we've had a couple meetings there, but most of them have been at pretty nice restaurants, or like tonight we have our meeting with Jim Saprinsky, and it's at a hotel. So we'll have pretty nice meal and everything else in a nice room and everything. That's until about, last year when I added the 2 new board members. I've been slowly trying to groom them to try to do some of the duties. It's getting there slowly, but it's hard, I think, as when you've got a certain way to do things, and sometimes delegating the others. It's difficult to find the time to train them, things of that nature. But we're slowly getting there.
Good. Mike, can you describe your role?
Yeah, it's very similar to Troy and Alfredo. Basically, kind of chief cook and bottle washer. You're doing a little bit of everything. So lately, I've been using the different conferences like Rocky Mountain and Collaborate. I'll go around and looking for speakers. And since we've opened it up to webinar kind of thing, so people don't have to fly out to Detroit. I know it's a destination city, and I know everybody wants to come here, but it's really hard to get people to come to Detroit. I think Roger would probably be about the only one that's on the call. But and Tim's come out. He's been good about that. But anyway, we got to open up the webinar thing, and that's opened up it's really helped me out, because now the next, I think 4 months or 5 months, I have speakers. I don't have to get speakers now for another 5 months. So I'm trying to get the rest of the year so I don't, it cuts down on my work. Right now, all I have to do is order food, and I'm trying to get someone else to do that as well. So the good news is we use our company's conference room for the meeting. So that saves us a lot of money for venue. If we had to go out like to a restaurant, anything like that, I think we would have to start charging. We haven't charged ever. So so that's kind of what I do. I do a little bit of everything, basically. Oh, and also posting on social media, which is more we need to do more of, basically.
Okay, so I'm going to play devil's advocate real quick, because it sounds like all of you do a lot of the work for your group. And in Utah, yes, I do a lot of the work, but we do have an 11-person board that has been stepping up quite a bit in doing different pieces. And so I don't want to scare people off from being leaders and that you have to do all the work. I think you can delegate. To Troy's point, sometimes you might not get the quality you want, but for your own sanity, it is good to delegate. Okay, so my next question kind of leads into that last one. How much time each month do you spend on user group functions? Let's start with Alfredo.
So that's it can be all over the place, quite honestly. I think a bare minimum is somewhere between 4 to 6 hours. In months where we know we're lining up sponsors, and we've determined the venue and the day of the meeting and things of that nature, then it goes up quite a bit, because you're setting up registration pages. We've got website updates, the social media, emails, a lot of emails back and forth. Sometimes working with I usually try to work with Oracle Press to get books for raffles, things of that nature. So that can jump up sometimes to as much as 16, 20 hours a month. But usually not more than that. And again, as we start to delegate more of my work with my other 2 board members, it should go down somewhat. You'll obviously still be involved in the email chains But yes, I would say between 4 to 6 hours at a minimum, and maybe as high as 20.
All right.
Yeah.
Mike, what about you?
For our monthly meeting, anywhere from 2 to 4 hours. Just last night or Tuesday was our monthly meeting, and we didn't have a presentation. So basically, I did a best of our mug. So I had to spend like 2 hours or 3 hours trying to, cut and paste out of presentations to say, hey, look at our mug's a great place to go, and here are some of the presentations we saw and you learned. So that's kind of an exception because I actually had to put something together. But usually it's 2 to 4. But the tough part is getting speakers. Obviously, the easy part is ordering food. So it all varies. Now with Mouse, on the other hand, when Mouse comes around, like any big one-day conference, we all know that's a little bit more as it gets closer to the event. So you'll spend, probably in a month's time, like our show's in November. So between October and November, I'll spend probably 30 to 40 hours in a month to get speakers. And I'm only the tech track leader, but we're meeting every week and everything else like that. So it all really depends on the like right now we're only meeting once a month, so it's pretty low right now. So when it gets closer, though, as anyone knows, there's more stuff.
All right, and Troy.
He makes a very good point there. That's something that I neglected to mention earlier, is that other thing that the leader always has to be prepared to do is step up and do a presentation, whether you're, presenter that you had scheduled either canceled on you, got hung up in an airport somewhere, got sick and couldn't make it, whatever. You always got to have something in your back pocket so that you can, pull off the presentation. So typically, we have our meetings every month scheduled regular as clockwork, so that kind of helps the timing there. It takes, I'd say, 6 to 8 hours to properly, update the website, send out email blasts, that sort of thing. And then day of event, I'll spend, 4 to 6 hours that day as well, getting the food, attending the meeting and hosting. So,
Okay.
yeah, if you don't have a presentation that's filled in advance, I try and always have a handful of them that I've already got in the can, so to speak. And so that way, anything goes off the rails, you can always pull out something and do a presentation.
All right, so it is a lot of time. So what are the perks? Why do you guys keep doing this? Let's start with Mike.
The reason, I've mentioned this story so many times now. I know people have heard it before, but my very first user group in 1987 was at the newly formed Detroit Oracle user group. It was at the Oracle office, and I literally spent 3 months trying to get header and detail thing working on forms. It was version 5 database at the time. I went to that one meeting, and I got the answer. I literally been working on it for 3 months. I had no idea we were going to even be talking about this kind of stuff. So I got that answer in one meeting, and that was the fire that is still lit in me. Is when I go to a conference and I can learn one thing that can help me or understand one thing, that's the fire that keeps me going. And what I hope as a leader is if I can provide a presentation or someone can provide a presentation that helps one person with one thing, to me, that's a success. And so that's why I continue to do it. It helps me professionally, but it also, it's what keeps me going. It's what lights my fire, I guess.
That's awesome, Mike. What about you, Troy? What are the perks?
Well, the perks are myriad. What really got me at it, Oracle, in my opinion, has been feeding me for about the past 30 years, and so at some point you feel like you really ought to give something back to the community that's supported you forever. And so bringing up that next generation of folks to be the DBAs, to be the developers, that sort of thing, is really what drives me. I love teaching folks. I love seeing that light bulb come on. To me, there's really nothing any more exciting than having someone coming along, asking some questions, listening to a presentation, and you can just see when they get it. And, as Mike said, you can spend months and months and months, but go to one presentation or one conference and get the answer that you'd struggle to try and find.
Great. And Alfredo, do you have anything to add to that?
I mean, obviously, for me, same thing what Mike and Troy both said. Finding the answers, the education. A lot of times, for a while there, at least maybe during the recession, it seems like companies really cut back on training, and even, the in-person interaction you can get from training, since a lot of stuff has gone virtual. I think that's huge, to be able to be in a room with like-minded individuals that do the same type of occupation and discuss those types of things is key. The networking. I didn't know any of you 3 years ago, even though I've been using Oracle for, coming up on 18 years. I didn't know any of the Oracle aces. I've met multiple Oracle authors. I didn't know that Steve Feuerstein lived in Chicago up until about 2 years ago. I mean, and now we've had him at meetings. We had Tom Kite that as a DBA, we looked up to him because you Google anything in the last 15 or plus years, and you'd always end up on his site. And then here we had him at our meeting the first year that I took over. So that type of stuff to me is like mind blowing, that I'm able to interact and socialize with a bunch of you folks. So I think that's all great. And giving back, I mean, you've been doing this for so long. For me, it felt like it was time to, hey, you got to do something, to give back to the folks, for me, in the Chicago area, that we deserve a group for a city as big as ours. There should be no reason that any large metropolitan area shouldn't have a user group, So all those things.
Great. So one thing that you brought up actually leads to my next question. How has being a leader improved your personal network? So Troy, can you comment on how it's improved your network? Because we all know networks are important for, new jobs, for learning things. How has it improved that for you?
Oh, it's actually improved my network tremendously. It's really interesting when things turn that practically all of the Oracle professionals in the Tampa Bay area know me because I've been engaged in the user community for so long, and I've been really diligent about answering email threads and those sorts of things. And so as those dips in the economy occur, it was interesting. I found that I really wasn't worried about losing my job or having to get another job or whatever. I was able to focus on doing what's best for the company, doing what's best for myself. And if things turned that, they needed to do a reduction in force or anything like that, I had, supreme confidence that I would have no problem finding another position with another organization in town. In fact, it tended to be, upside down from normal. Usually I had more folks looking for me to come work for them than I was looking to go find a new place. So, I don't see how you can do any better than that.
Great. Alfredo?
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much, echo what Troy said. And some of what I said before, meeting some of these folks that you've read their books, the Oracle ACE program has been great, meeting all those people, being able to work with them. We've had workshops now that I've worked side by side with some of these people that I've, only read their blogs or whatnot online. And I think that's fantastic. The networking is great. Haven't had to use it yet for a new job. But like Troy said, my confidence level is much higher because I think it'll be much easier because, the old saying's true, right? It's who you know sometimes, not what you know. And I've used it for other things like, we were looking for an S-based specialist to help us out on a short-term project. And I reached out to a couple people out on the network that I had met in the last year. And right away, they had a list of names for me. So that's been beneficial. Things like that. It's been really great. The conferences are great to, catch up with people and talk to them. And it seems like every conference you meet somebody else that you've either been talking to online or have read their blogs and so forth. So it's fantastic.
Great. And Mike?
Yeah, I echo what Troy and Alfredo said. I mean, Michael Corey used to be the president of the IOUG. I think he was the first president. And he told me once, he said, Mike, never underestimate the value of knowing people. And what he was talking about is like when you're looking for new jobs and stuff, people don't look at that. They look at your skills. Can you do a database recovery, things of that nature, but they don't look at who you know. And that's invaluable. And how that came up and how that kind of translates to everyday businesses. There's a ratio between intelligence and distance. The farther you're away to give a presentation, the more they think you're intelligent. And it's just the reverse. If you're in your office and you say, no, this is really the way to do things, and they go, oh, I don't know. And then if you can call that person that you know, like a Steve or somebody like that, Steve Feurenstein or somebody like that, who can then say, yeah, Mike is right. Mike was, yeah, exactly right. They go, oh, wow, see, Steve called from Chicago. He must really know what he's talking about, And it's happened more times than not. Mark Farnham is one that I've called many times where they won't believe me. Just say, hey, Mark, can you talk to him? Just give him and they'll believe him because he's, he is Mark Farnham. He's been around forever and he knows a lot of things. So the value of knowing people not only help on your daily stuff, but also for new business. I mean, it's just giving presentations. You don't even have to say, you just say I'm from XYZ company, and people call you up and say, well, I'm trying to do the same thing. Would you be interested? That kind of stuff. So it's invaluable.
Nice. Okay, my next question is, what is your biggest challenge as a leader? I forget how I've been rotating through. I think we're on Alfredo to start.
So my number one biggest challenge, the one thing that is part of my spiel, and if anyone's ever seen me trying to schmooze any of the top-rated speakers at a conference or any of the Oracle Aces, it's the fact that we're completely unfunded. We have no money. We are a complete charity case. So it's hard to find sponsors to get us the venue, and I can usually get the speaker, no problem. That's the easy part, because everybody seems to want to reach out to me and say, hey, I'd love to come to Chicago and speak. But it's like, if I don't have the venue with the food, how do we make it happen? So that is my absolute number one biggest challenge.
Okay, thank you. Mike?
Well, speakers was my biggest challenge until about 6-7 months ago when I finally opened up. And I know Meetup doesn't like people using WebEx and things of that nature, but by opening up WebEx, I've been able to get great speakers just to call in and just do their presentation and do their spiel without having to spend any money. All I have to do is log in. So that used to be our number one issue. Now my number one issue now is trying to get other people to help with the kind of like the social calendar and getting the word out, and et cetera. So it's that transition piece that we initially talked about at the very beginning. That's probably, if I have one problem, it's that trying to get a transition going. And I still trying. I haven't figured it out yet.
Okay. What about you, Troy? What's your biggest challenge as a
Well,
leader?
I always grin when I hear folks talking about the challenge getting speakers. I guess I have a unfair advantage over a lot of the different areas because, well, Florida is a destination for a lot of folks. So getting folks to come in, especially in, December, January, February, usually isn't very hard for me to talk them into it. So I do fairly well with getting speakers. Funding is definitely the biggest challenge. Coming up with creative ways to fund the different events, fund the ones that you can, overfund those, and reserve some money for another session that you may want that person there, but their company isn't in a position to provide any sponsorship dollars. And so I expend a lot of energy trying to balance the funding to get money from the folks who have money and use that money to help the folks that don't have money. So that's definitely the biggest challenge.
Okay. My next question is, do you have support from your employer? And if you do, how did you convince them to support it? Let's start with Mike.
In my case, about 5 years ago, when we moved to where I'm work now, which is Secure 24, he offered it as a place to do our meetings and also board meetings and stuff like that. So one of the things we did is we traded kind of services with Secure 24, and we said, listen, if you allow us to have board meetings and you allow us to do meetings once a month at your facility, we'll give you a free booth at the conference. And that was one way that we could really leverage the user group with the company. That's not always true. If I was to leave Secure 24, for example, I'd be in the same problem as Alfredo. I would know I would need a venue, and I wouldn't even, it's not about the venue as much as it is getting the money to pay for the venue. So, but that's how we did it.
All right, Troy?
Yeah, give me the question again. Sorry, I got distracted. Yeah.
No worries. Do you have support from your employer, and how do you convince them to support it if they are supporting it?
Yeah, actually, that's another one of the good tales about having a name in the area. My current employer, American Express, actually came to me and said one of the main reasons they wanted me to join them was to be that face and attend the conferences and have that visibility outside the company. And so they made it very clear that they were 100% behind all of the energy that I expend for the users groups, both the IOUG board as well as the local SunCoast board. All of the venues, the last 3 years, I think I've been to anywhere from 3 to 6 conferences each year. And all of that's had the full backing of my senior leadership all the way up the line.
Nice. And what about you, Alfredo?
Yeah, I mean, the support's been really, really great from my company. My manager is an ex-consultant actually from Tusk, which is Rich Nemec's old company. So he understands the importance of, running a user group, sharing back all that education with folks. So I've had no issues at all. In fact, my company would probably even sponsor the meetings from a venue standpoint. Unfortunately, we're out in the middle of nowhere, and I think that the turnout would be very poor. So that's the reason, or else I'd actually have a venue for every meeting. We could probably have monthly meetings, but unfortunately, it doesn't work out. So yeah, but it's been good. And the CIO has also been very supportive as well. Even from a presentation standpoint, conference, attendance. So yeah, it's been good. No issues there.
So how did you convince them to be okay with it?
Well, by the time they both joined, I had already taken over the Oracle user groups. I don't know if they had much of a choice. It's not like they could say, no, you can't do it. But I mean, they're very good about, hey, on the days that I have meetings, I need to leave an hour early to get to the venue. Some of our own folks attend the meetings and they get, education out of it. So I really didn't have to do anything. They're just like, that's great. We like to see that. In some cases, they're, it kind of puts an exposure out there for my company. So since barely anybody knows about our company and the fact that we're an Oracle shop and sometimes we're looking for people. So there's that networking benefit again, right? Here's the president of the Chicago Oracle user group. He works for a company called Break Parts. Oh, what's that? They must be an Oracle shop. Maybe we should look for a job there if Alfredo's working there. I don't know, So I think it's kind of a win-win, for them.
Yeah, I asked that specifically because my last employer did not support it, and I was very often told I had to do things on my own time.
Wow.
And so that made it challenging for me to be a leader, and I never got over that with that company, and now I'm not there for multiple reasons. But I'm sure that it would be great if everyone that wants to be a leader gets support from their employer, but if you don't, you can still make it happen and try to justify it, in the benefits that everyone has mentioned.
Yeah.
Okay, so my last question for you guys is, if there's someone listening to this that does want to get started, this is encouraging them to, want to step up and participate, how would you encourage them to start getting involved with their user group and move into a leadership role? I've totally forgotten where I'm at. Let's try Troy first this time.
Well, the best recommendation I can make is offer to do something that you can do. If you've been attending the meetings for any period of time, then you probably have a pretty good view of some of the areas where they have challenges or where, it takes some work to get done. One of the quickest ways to get involved is to make the offer, because I would say, based on the leaders that I've spoke with over the years, very rarely will you be turned down if you're willing to do something, whether it's updating the website, whether it's sending out email blasts, whether it's greeting people at the venue, bringing them in, that sort of thing. Any little thing that could get you started will allow them to start learning who you are, what type of work ethic you have, that sort of thing. How reliable are the things that you volunteer to do? And so that, to me, is probably the quickest, easiest way to get involved.
That's great advice, Troy. What about Alfredo? Anything to add to that?
A lot of what Troy said, but I always tell people, my backstory a little bit with the Chicago Oracle user group is that I met Tony back in probably 2005 when I worked at my previous employer, and I had wanted to get involved, but quite honestly, and I tell people this story, for some reason I was petrified. I thought, there's no way, what am I going to offer to this? I can't get involved with something like this. What kind of commitment is it going to be needed? And I wasted 10 years. That's like my biggest regret with the user group community. I could have got started 10 plus years ago, and I didn't. And I tell people it's not nearly as bad, not at all, of what you think it's going to be. It's not like if you don't get something done on a certain date, nothing's really going to fail or break, or you're not going to get fired. It's all volunteer based. And I think the rewards greatly outweigh any of the negative connotations that you might be thinking would go along with doing this particular position or any position, on a board of a user group. So I tell them that story and say, don't, if it's hesitation because you're unsure, you're scared, let's talk about it. And I've brought this up usually at the beginning of our meetings, if anybody's interested, et cetera, come talk to me. If there's other issues, as we know, you've got small children at this time in your life, or you just took on a new job that's got high demands, and it's probably not the right time for you to do it. Those are legitimate concerns. But, if there's some sort of fear because you're uncertain, then come talk to me. So just encouraging them, I guess.
Great. Mike.
Pretty much the same kind of things. I would say number one, if there's just volunteer for something. Like everyone knows I need to order food, so if someone could just order, here's the phone number, call the pizza place, just order the food. Here's a credit card. All you have to do is charge it to the credit card. Just pick something, because again, for every meeting we have to order food and we have to get a speaker. So, and then update the website. So there's three things that someone could do. The other thing is I would say is don't overcommit and don't try to do everything as a volunteer, only because you're going to get burned out and you're basically going to not complete the stuff that you have promised. Alfredo mentioned, small kids and stuff in your family that could change things. We had a president just before I took over again about 5-6 years ago. Great guy. I mean, just full of energy. Was, I thought, man, I transitioned well. I finally got someone to take over. He was getting great topics, everything else, and he was really doing well. And he said to us, he says, I won't be here next month because my wife's having a baby. I said, oh, congratulations. And just chit-chatting. I said, what number is that for you? And he goes, number 10. I'm not joking. By the way, he now has 13. But and I finally said, there's no way in hell you're going to be able to do this user group and have a full-time job and be with your family. It's just, it's just, I mean, and he was a great guy, and he comes to our meetings, but he just can't, but so don't overcommit. I see a lot of people volunteering for everything and knowing that you only have a set number of days or hours in a day. You can only do so much, and just do it. I guess just pick something and do it well. So
That's great feedback. I do want to add one more little personal story about why I got involved that I don't think we brought up. Many years ago, I was told by one of my bosses or someone in leadership above me that I didn't have leadership experience, and that's why they weren't considering me for certain positions. And so I looked to the user group as a way to get leadership experience. And with leading our regional group, I had to balance a budget and manage a budget. I had to learn how to manage volunteers and learn how to communicate with different people. So it really developed those skills, and I think it helped me then in my career prove that I could move up into different positions because I now had that experience through my volunteering. So I encourage you, if you're just even trying to get experience with different things, to get involved in the user group. Okay, so I want to open up the floor to those on the call. Do you have any other questions for our panelists that you're still wondering about that we didn't cover today about being a leader or how they run their groups?
Actually, I have a couple I know I've seen Roger on, and I also seen Ahmed, and they're facing a lot of the same things we are with the transition. And for example, with the Toledo Youth Group, I have not seen a meeting in quite a while, and Ahmed just recently actually moved back to home so he could be with his family. And I was just wondering what challenges their groups are having.
Well, it's funny you bring up Ahmed. He raised his hand that he'd like to ask a question.
Sure.
So go ahead, Ahmed.
Hey guys. Hey Mike.
Hey.
Yeah, this is Ahmed, former president of the West Michigan Oracle Users Group. I have, I think Mike Hine also is on this web conference. He's formally taken over. Before I answer that, Mike, I actually have a quick question for Alfredo. Alfredo, I remember meeting you a few years back at Collaborate when you just took over the Chicago Oracle Users Group. So when you took over this thing, what did you do those first 3 months? I mean, now you're like, okay, nobody stepped up. I'm here. Kind of, what's the first 3-4 things that you did?
I'll tell you, the stars have been in my on my side for quite a while, or the horseshoe has been laying around somewhere near me, because honestly, here's what happened. The deal was that I had to find the venue for the very first meeting that I agreed to take over, and I presented. So I did some 12C new features, and we met at the Schaumburg Library, which was free, that same venue that I use as a fallback. And after that, at that meeting, I met Jeremy Schneider, which you guys, I think, probably know. And he was very supportive, but he was working for Oracle, so he couldn't really, technically help us, but he's like, let me know. Fuad Ashad was at that meeting, and he says, hey, I work for Oracle. This is great. I can't believe you got this going again. Let me know what I can do. Well, the first thing that came out of my mouth was, can you get us Tom Kite? No kidding when I said that to him. He goes, let me find out. A week later, I'm on an email with Tom Kite, and we set a meeting for October later of that year. After that, I started thinking about, well, who in Chicago can I get to come speak? And I remembered an instructor that I had back in 2007 through an Oracle University RAC administration course that I had taken. Well, that instructor happened to be Jim Saprinsky. Another person that was at that meeting said, hey, I just got back from Hot Sauce, and I was talking to Jim Saprinsky, and he wants to come and do a presentation at your meeting. So he's been our biggest, quite honestly, our biggest champion, and that's why we awarded him an award last year, right around this time, because he's been involved with about 35% of our meetings. And we're very grateful to have him here locally. So, but yeah, the first 3 months, it was like, okay, how do I run the website? I worked with Tony Jedlinski, the original president of the COUG, and he transferred all that documentation on how you update stuff, because he had written all this stuff in Apex. So it was just basically going through and understanding how to make the updates, and then just start getting my feelers out there to talking to people and trying to find vendors, and vendors started finding out about us, and they were all like, oh yeah, how do we sponsor a meeting? So things just kind of fell for me to some regard. And I think we have some special dynamics going on in Chicago because we are such a big market. I think there's a lot more IT companies here, vendors, consultants that are willing to sponsor in return for a list exchange. Here are the people that attended and the companies they work for. And my members know that because, membership is free. They don't pay any dues. So there's a little give and take there. I unfortunately have to give them your work contact information in return for them sponsoring a meeting where we have these great speakers that tell us about this great technology. I hope that answers your question.
Oh, yeah, very good, very good. Thank you. And Mike Gangler, when I took over the West Michigan Oracle Users Group many years ago, there was a transition from the president there. I sat with him over a couple of dinners, and he explained to me what they did. This is what I did, this is what I, so I wasn't on my own for a period of time. And I hope to do the same thing with Mike Hine as well. So he's, even though I'm out of state right now, it's not like, okay, formally off, you can't reach out to me and so forth. So that's kind of helped in my case, at least.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next meeting, actually.
You hear that, Mike? Hine, yeah. That is?
Yeah, this is Mike. Hi, yeah, thank you. Yeah, we are working to get that together, so it's definitely appreciated. I do have a question. What do you see the trends for meetings? We've got all different types of venues. Full conference. Mike, you run a lot of these meetups. How do you see this moving throughout this? Do smaller venues have better luck with just the meetups?
It's been working for me only because I was left alone to put on a half-day meeting, and I just couldn't do it any longer. But like as Troy said, he's very successful at doing half-day meetings. He's got the people to help out, and for some reason, people would rather go to Florida than to Detroit. I'm not quite, I still don't understand that, but
just don't understand why. You know?
I don't either. Hey, we got wine here, and we got Italian food. So anyway, but seriously, when you have like a half-day meeting, it's a lot easier to get somebody to fly out to be there. But when you have like a 3-hour meeting after work, who's going to want to fly out to Detroit, spend an hour or two from 7 to 9, and then fly home the next day? It's a lot of expense, that kind of stuff. So it's worked for us. But I think for half-day meetings, I wouldn't do it for half-day meetings.
Okay, thanks. And then how do you gauge? I mean, where do your focus areas? You know, there's different sets of technologies. How do you gauge for that? Is it just who's available to speak during that, or are you trying to align to an agenda?
Oracle will tell you if it's got cloud in it, they want you to present.
Of course.
But I mean, I got a vendor. You guys may know him, Chris Lawless from DB Visit, who's willing to give some product pitches to our group, and he gave me, six. He gave me 6 topics: RMAN, replication, migration, Oracle to Kafka, why not SE? These are all great topics. And I said, honestly, they're all good. They're not product pitches, by the way. They're just, stuff. And so, you got to really gauge what kind of people you have. That's my opinion. But I don't know about Troy and Alfredo. What you guys do.
I think, you have to have a good balance. Our group is mainly made up of DBAs and developers.
You need your audience. You need to know who they are.
Yeah. So DBA developers, and, we've got BI folks as well. But so I stick to those, I guess, call them back-end technologies. We don't do a whole lot with front-end applications. Even though I'm an e-business guy, there's a whole other group and a whole other forum for that. And it just it wouldn't mix well, I don't think, because we don't have those type of peoples. And then the other thing is, if I was holding monthly meetings, I probably would be open to other areas like applications. But unfortunately, with only trying to squeeze in 4, maybe 5 meetings a year, you kind of have to limit the scope of the folks that are, going to come to those. The other thing is I like to see stuff that's still practical. It's great to talk about all the cool gizmo technology that's out there now, cloud this and cloud that. But, at the end of the day, most people are going back to their shops. And if you're a DBA, you might still be on version 10 or version 11. You really want stuff that, like Mike had said earlier, if they can take back one thing that they can use, if it's about the latest, greatest version of the database that's only available on the Oracle public cloud, it's not going to be very useful for them. It's great to know about what's coming and understand your options as you move forward, but I like the practicality side of it more. That's where I think the biggest benefit of this stuff is as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. My standard rule of thumb that I give all the presentations, all the presenters when they come is, I want you to be sure that you give everyone in the room something that they can take back home to their shop tomorrow and use and find some benefit of, without having to convince their CIO to spend $250,000 with your company to buy some piece of software. And so very, very challenging sometimes. I try and be very conscious about rotating the topic and paying attention to, my group is probably 75% VBA, 20% developer, and the rest mixture of BI, admin folks, DMs, that sort of thing. So you want to keep a good healthy mix of all of those technologies so that you keep everyone interested and everyone wanting to continue attending.
Thank you.
This has been a great discussion, guys. I want to be conscious of time, and so we are a little bit over the hour. So we'll have our next call. Well, actually, Collaborate will come up before our next call. So I hope all of you have seen the emails from Kim about the regional leader discount that we offer for Collaborate, and we will be planning some meetings for the regional leaders like yourselves to get together and talk with each other. I always enjoy those in-person meetings. So more to come about those meetings as we get them scheduled. And we'll let you know about the next call. The topic will again be about succession planning. And I haven't totally worked out the topic yet, but I hope it'll be just as engaging as this one. This one's been great. So thank you to all of our panelists, and thank you to all of you attending.
Thank you, Michelle, and good luck next week.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for hosting, Michelle. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Thanks, guys.